I want to teach you the 5 signs that your relationship is over. Recognizing these signs is critical, even though it might be hard for you to accept it. Now, the fact that you're even watching this video tells me that you're already thinking that this relationship isn't going to last. And even if that isn't necessarily true, those thoughts that you're having that make you second guess yourself and start acting weird and clingy, those will destroy a good relationship. You have a choice to make right now. You either address the 5 things I'm about to talk about in this video, or face the truth and end the relationship yourself because it's over. So what are the 5 signs? Sign number 1, you don't feel like yourself. In this relationship, you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You don't know how to act when you're in public or when you're around their friends. You aren't sure if you should hold hands. You're uncomfortable talking about your feelings because you don't know if they're on the same page. All of these things mean you don't feel comfortable being you. And any relationship where you have to twist yourself into somebody that you're not in order to keep the peace, it only starts a war inside of you. And those kind of relationships, they always blow up. The second sign, you're constantly questioning how you should communicate. If you're nervous about sending a text asking if they want to hang out, or do you obsess over whether they opened your Snap but they haven't responded, or how long it's been since they texted you back? Do they watch your Instagram story but not respond to your text messages? Are you compulsively checking social media to try to get the clues you need that it's okay to reach out? Any relationship where you spend more time questioning rather than talking about communication is a relationship that's broken. Sign number 3, you think about where the relationship stands all the time. So do you constantly think about questions like, where's this going? Are we exclusive? Are we committed? Can I introduce you to my family and take you to a work event? How should I introduce you? What are you thinking? What do you say about me? Not knowing where you stand means this relationship doesn't stand a chance. Sign number 4, you're starting to get annoyed. You're now the one opening snaps and not responding. You're saying you're too busy to hang out in order to send a message. You're hesitant to commit to future plans because you don't know the future of this relationship. You snap at them more than usual. All those cute little things that used to make you laugh, they're really annoying. And here's the kiss of death. If their name pops up on your phone or they walk through the door at the end of the day and you feel dread and not excitement, that's a sign that you're over this person. And the 5th and final sign, you're questioning whether or not you have the same values. If you're starting to feel like you're losing yourself, for example, maybe you're drinking more than you'd like. You're spending less time with your friends. You're skipping the gym. You're only doing things, for example, like listening to certain types of music because it interests them. This is a major problem. If there isn't a balance between the two of you, you will always feel like a less important part of the relationship because you are. Now, here's a quick test to see if you're losing yourself. Just go out alone tonight with your friends, and if it feels like a relief because you can finally act like yourself, that's a sign that this is not a relationship for you. I bet what you're doing is you're confusing chemistry for compatibility. You see, chemistry is like a match that gets lit, but eventually it burns out. Compatibility means you and your partner bring out the best in you, which is why it goes the distance. There are 9 types of behavior that we kind of dismiss as, okay, not that big of a deal, I can live with it, whatever. And the truth is, now that you understand what really builds a healthy relationship and strengthens it over time, you'll see why these behaviors that I'm about to explain are non-negotiables. Like, if you spot this in a relationship that you're in, you got to flag it, you got to call it out, and you cannot tolerate it. Because if you allow this behavior to continue, it will destroy your relationship. Okay, so behavior number 1, your partner keeps lying to you. And I don't care if it's just little white lies about where they were, or where they spent their money, or who they were hanging out with. Oh, I was just hanging out with the guys, but it was a particular one of his friends that you don't like that much. So lying in a relationship, it literally cuts to the core of breaking apart any kind of shared values, because you need trust and honesty. And even the white lies mean that there's no trust and honesty, because when somebody's telling you a white lie, they're hiding information from you, or they don't want to deal with your reaction. So now they're manipulating you. And in terms of connection, the second that somebody decides to lie about something, they're turning away from you and they're disrespecting you. And so lying, non-negotiable. And don't just kind of roll your eyes at the white lies. You got to flag this stuff. You got to draw a boundary with it, because it will not work in a long-term successful relationship. Second behavior that you have to address is when your partner gives you the silent treatment. Giving someone the silent treatment is one of the most manipulative, dysfunctional ways to behave in an adult relationship. I mean, think about the silent treatment, like a kid. Fine, I'm not going to talk to you. When somebody gives you the silent treatment, number one, it's probably something that their caregivers gave to them when they were a kid. So this is their default way of dealing with conflict and upset. They take themselves away from you. They turn away from you. They, instead of turning toward you to resolve conflict, they keep things in a gridlock because they refuse to talk to you about it. This is like an emotional guillotine when somebody does this to you. It is immature, it is manipulative, and it is selfish, and it is a power move. You're dealing with somebody who either is so uncomfortable talking about their feelings, or so uncomfortable having conversations to resolve conflict, or worse, that they are such a narcissist or engage in narcissistic behaviors that they literally stonewall you instead of talking to you. This should not be tolerated, period. This is a coping mechanism, if your partner's doing it, that they've probably been doing for a long time. And you've got to draw a boundary with this, because you cannot build a successful, loving, and trusting partnership with somebody who at any moment will just turn away from you, cut you off, and stonewall you with silence. It's immature, it's rude, it's disrespectful, and you need to literally call it out and not tolerate it. Another behavior is when they use your insecurities against you. Now, remember the 4 things I was talking about? Like, you got to have self-understanding and understanding about your partner, and you got to have shared values, and you got to have connection. When somebody uses your insecurities against you, that's mean. That's belittling. And what happens over time, if somebody is using your insecurities against you, like let's say that English is your second language and they make jokes about your accent or the fact that you talk so fast that they can't understand you. Or they make jokes about what you drink or what you eat or whatever it may be, your skinny legs. When they use that stuff against you, the way the ex treated you, it could be anything. That is the exact opposite of connection. That is the exact opposite of respect. That is belittling, it's abusive, and this is a major red flag, and you should not tolerate it. Kind of taking it a step further, do not ever let your partner call you names. This is number 4. And especially if they sort of dismiss it, this is called gaslighting. When they call you a bitch, or they call they like make fun of you, they call you names you don't like, and then they're like, what's wrong with you? Can't you take a joke? I didn't really mean it. If your partner is calling you names, this is not a form of connection. This certainly does not recognize shared values. They're not resolving conflict, they're creating it. And more importantly, if you tell them, don't freaking call me that, like it's rude, it makes me feel bad, and they continue to do it, now you know you're with somebody who doesn't have your best interest in mind, and you need to end it as far as I'm concerned. If you got somebody who's calling you names and you tell them not to and they keep doing it, and then they gaslight you and say you're the problem, that. This is not a relationship for you. The 5th thing that we need to signal as a red flag is that they constantly interrupt you, talk down to you, talk over you, or kind of shoot you that look like, I don't want to hear from you. What that signals to you is they don't care what you think. What that signals to you is that there is no connection here. There is superiority. What that signals to you is that they believe that you're not in a relationship. They believe that they're more important than you because what they think is more important than what you may think. In fact, if somebody's always doing this, they don't really want to understand or connect with you. They just want to dominate you. And so that is also not going to work and should not be tolerated because that's not a healthy relationship. The sixth thing that you want to be on the lookout for is if your partner will not allow you to have some independence. Said in a scarier way, if your partner is controlling or slightly stalkerish or crazy jealous or is going through your things or snooping through your email or doesn't trust you or kind of accuses you of things, this is a danger sign because this will not get better over time. This is somebody's crap from the past, probably an ex, or probably something that they witnessed growing up in the household that they were in, that are major trust issues for themselves, that they're now taking out on you. A healthy, mature, adult relationship is one where there is mutual respect and mutual trust. And by the way, you don't earn someone's trust. If you're in a healthy relationship, trust is given. Trust is assumed. And trust is broken whenever there's behavior that causes it to be broken. But if you're in this relationship with somebody, you've done nothing wrong, and this person is controlling you and accusing you and snooping and acting in a way that clearly demonstrates they don't trust you, you need to get out and that person needs to get into a therapist chair because it's not your job to fix this. Number 7, if your partner is making big decisions without you, there is no relationship, period. If your partner is, taking a couple $1,000s out of the joint savings account to go buy, something that they wanted without telling you. If they have a secret credit card and they're making purchases and you have no idea about this, it's also a form of lying. Let's say that they've just decided that over the holidays, you're going to spend the holidays with his or her family, and they didn't even consult you on it. These kinds of big decisions, the kind of decisions that impact you, these are decisions that you're supposed to make together. These are decisions that couples talk through. These are decisions that if, there's a little bit of stuff to sort out, you seek to understand where one another's coming from. You compromise, you listen to each other. When somebody's making big decisions without you and then kind of acts all annoyed when you are not happy about it or when you call them out on it, that's a huge sign that this is not a relationship that's going to last. This is a dictatorship where somebody's calling the shots and expects you to fall in line. Not going to work. Number 8, if your partner is constantly telling you how you're supposed to feel versus listening to you and validating how you feel, you're not really in a relationship with somebody. You are with somebody who not only doesn't have their own self-awareness, but they're not interested in gaining any self-awareness about how you're feeling about anything. And so if they're ignoring your opinions and then telling you that you should do this or that or the other thing, if they say, oh, come on, that was just a joke, why aren't you laughing? If they say it's no big deal, I don't know why you're upset about it. If they're constantly not listening to you and invalidating how you feel, this is a major issue. You're not with somebody that's turning toward you. They've turned away from you. They're not interested in becoming aware or connected to you. This is somebody who just has you there next to them, and there's really not a strong connection. I'm dead serious about this, and I know that I'm making this bigger, and here's why. So many of us just see these warning signs. They're like, oh, well, it's something. It is a big deal. It's a big deal because, there's a big difference between what people say and how they act. And if you want to know how somebody truly feels, ignore what they're saying and watch how they behave. And here's the ninth sign that you have a partner that disrespects you. You are in a relationship that is not healthy, that is not going to go the distance, or if it does go the distance, it's because you're ignoring these things and you're not happy. But it's when your partner ignores your boundaries. You see, boundaries are critical. Boundaries are critical not only in friendships and with work, but boundaries are so important in your romantic relationships. In fact, healthy relationships are relationships that have boundaries and between people who establish and respect one another's boundaries. So when you have a partner that takes some of your money, doesn't tell you, doesn't return the money, spends it on something that you don't want, that is an example of somebody crossing boundaries. If somebody's invading your personal space, if somebody is pressuring you to do things that you don't want to do, that's an example of how somebody's crossing your personal boundaries. If a person is speaking to you in a way that is demeaning or calling you names, again, another example of how somebody is ignoring your boundaries. If your spouse or partner is blowing up your phone while you're trying to get work done at work and you've told them not to, this is another example of how they are disrespecting your boundaries. Now, the good news is these 9 things are also examples that if you are in a relationship where there is a foundation and you raise any one of these issues, hey, honey, this is a boundary of mine. When I'm at work, I need to concentrate on work. And it is embarrassing and distracting when you are texting me all day long. And then when you get upset that I can't text you back, and I need you to stop doing that. Okay? I cannot text you all day long while I'm at work. If your partner's reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I just missed you, babe. I promise I will work on it. Thank you for telling me. That's a great sign. If you say to your partner, hey, I don't want you to tell me what you think. I just need you to listen and I need you to validate what I'm feeling. And they go, oh gosh, sorry. Yeah, of course. Thank you for telling me that. And you start to develop a new habit of when you're about to talk, saying to your partner, hey, I just need to vent. Can you listen and not give me advice right now? I just need somebody to hear me. And your partner goes, great, I will absolutely listen. Now you're taking this thing that used to bother you and you're turning toward each other and working through it. If you call out your partner because they made big decisions without you, and they say, you're right, I shouldn't have done that. It would have felt terrible if you had committed to your parents that we were going to be with them this year and you didn't talk to me first. I got it. Thanks for telling me that. That's an example of how these things, when called out with the right person, has you turn toward one another. If telling your partner that their lack of trust because of what their ex did is driving you crazy, it's disrespectful, and it must end, and that gets them to go to therapy, that's a sign of somebody working hard and gaining the awareness that they need so that they can be a better partner. That's a good thing. All the other behaviors too, if they stop calling you the names and apologize, if they become better at not interrupting, but become better at listening, if they stop using those insecurities and start lifting you up instead, and if your partner starts working really hard, because for people who have the silent treatment as a default, this is kind of hardwired. If they're avoiding conflict, stonewalling you, but you see them trying, you see them working with a therapist, you see them using simple things like saying, I can't have this conversation right now because I'm too emotional. Give me 10 minutes to collect myself, and I will come back in this room and we will talk through it. That's a good thing because you're seeing the person take the feedback and actually try to change. And finally, lying, when you catch them, there's kind of 2 liars. There's the people who are lying to you because they are manipulative assholes. And that's always going to be a problem. And then there are the people that are lying to you because they're terrified to disappoint you, or because they have low self-esteem, or because they've always been lied to and this is kind of the default, but they don't want to do it. And so they're willing to do the work to become more self-aware, to get to the heart of why they're so afraid to tell you the truth. And it typically has to do with self-worth and self-confidence and self-love. And honestly, those kind of breakthroughs that you have as a couple that are the result of you calling out these 9 forms of disrespect that are causing breakdowns, if you're in the right relationship, any breakdown that you have will become a breakthrough that causes y'all to turn toward one another and work on creating better trust, better communication to solve these problems and old habits together. That's when these things are good. If you get pushback or nastiness when you call out these 9 things, lies, silent treatment, using insecurities against you, calling you names, interrupting when you're talking, not trusting you and invading your privacy, making big decisions without you, telling you how you're supposed to feel, or ignoring your boundaries, honey, there is an exit sign over the door and you need to locate it and walk out it. So, 7 common types of disrespect that you need to call out. So, number 1, this is when people talk over you. Yes, it happens all the time. You may not even be aware of how often it is happening to you. Now, for example, I'm going to give you an example from my own life. I did not realize that I am guilty of talking over one of my daughters. And, I said very early on in this video to you that a lot of people that are engaging in these common forms of disrespect don't really realize when they're doing it. And the reason why they don't realize it is because they've been doing it for so long and people just sort of put up with it and don't call them out on it, that you don't even hear yourself when you're doing it. I don't personally want to be disrespectful. I don't want to talk over other people. What happens is I get so excited when somebody's talking about something that's interesting to me that I tend to just layer something on. And this was a real problem in our family dynamic, and I didn't even know it. Here's what happened. We've got 3 kids. We have our oldest, who is Sawyer, our middle daughter, Kendall, who's 21, and our son, who is 16. And then there's me and Chris. And about a year ago, we were at dinner talking up a storm, and Sawyer went to go tell a story. And Kendall and I, we literally jumped right in and started talking over her. And Sawyer took her hands and hit the table and said, "Will you guys stop it? You're always talking over me. Always. I'm so sick of it." And both Kendall and I kind of sat back and were like, whoa, we are? I didn't even know it. So Sawyer pointing it out was an incredible moment in our family. Because number 1, this has been a dynamic that's been driving her crazy for years. She has felt very disrespected. She is also a little bit more introverted. Kendall and I are extroverted. And we were unaware that we were basically engaging in behavior that made her feel disrespected, run over, unimportant. And it was simply because we were just jumping in on topics that she was talking about. And so ever since she's called me out on it, I am very, very, very mindful. I'm not always great at it, but I'm very mindful that when someone is talking, to please keep my mouth shut. So when someone talks over you and you start to feel disrespected, when somebody interrupts you and you feel disrespected, you need to call it out. Here's a couple ways that you can do it. You can do it like Sawyer did. You can throw your hands on the table and say, "Would you stop constantly interrupting and talking over me?" You can also keep talking. This is a really effective thing to do if you're at work. If you're at work in a meeting and somebody interrupts you, this happens to women all the time, and somebody starts talking over you, just keep talking and keep talking louder. Or you can say, "Excuse me, I was talking," and keep talking. Or you can say, "Hey, Mike, I was talking. Please don't interrupt me." Calling somebody out stops the disrespect and it empowers you because you're respecting yourself. All right, let's move on to number 2. So number 2, common form of disrespect that you need to call out is people in your life who are perpetually late. Now, I have a confession to make. This used to be me. One of the embarrassing things about making this video is literally these 7 types of disrespect are so common, I realized that I engaged in them in the past or I engage in them now. And you will probably, as you're listening to me, realize, holy cow, perpetual lateness, guilty as charged, Mel Robbins. That's a form of disrespect? Yes, it is. And again, people who are constantly running late, particularly those folks who don't give you a heads up if they're running late, but they breeze in 10 to 15 minutes late. Oh, I'm sorry. Most people who are perpetually late are very hard on themselves and they feel bad about being late. And so they're so consumed by making themselves wrong that they don't realize that their lateness is enormously disrespectful to you. And so what you want to do if you've got somebody in your life who is running perpetually late, like I used to, is you need to call it out. You just need to call it out because the person that's constantly running late is so busy beating themselves up, so busy feeling anxious because they're constantly running late, so consumed in the habit of being late and then saying, I'm sorry, and, oh, I'm really sorry, I'm sorry, that they haven't been yanked out of that and pulled to a higher conversation, which is one that's like, look, I get that you got stuff going on in your life, but when you show up 10 minutes late and I've been waiting for you, you are disrespecting my time. And if you do it again, I'm not going to make plans with you. When you put it in their behavior and how it's impacting you, most of us, when we're called out in that manner, like your lateness is a sign of disrespect, it's mortifying. And that's the kind of truth bomb that some people need, myself included, in order to understand the impact of your behavior that you're not getting intentional about changing. And look, occasionally running late, that's one thing. But a common form of disrespect is to have somebody in your life who is perpetually late, to roll your eyes, to gripe about it behind their back, but to never say anything about the fact that it actually bothers you. So when you say that it bothers you, please do not waste my time. 2 things happen. You're going to cause, hopefully, a breakthrough and an awakening for the person who's perpetually late. And you're also going to feel a jolt of respect and confidence for yourself by calling it out. The 3rd form of disrespect that's so common that you're probably not calling it out is when somebody is dismissive of you. So what is dismissiveness? Because it's not really being rude. The behavior's rude. But dismissiveness is when somebody's acting in a way that they are indifferent or they're disregarding you. Okay, so it's a little bit different than somebody just being flat out rude. It's sort of this subtle behavior where, holy cow, you're picking up this sign that somebody is totally indifferent to how you feel or they're disregarding how you feel. And the most common form of this, and it is rampant, is when you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden they start looking at their phone. Like literally, how many times have you been in the middle of a conversation and either your friend or your partner or your kid or somebody at work, you're talking about something and you look at your friend and all of a sudden they look down at their phone? That is dismissiveness. If you are sitting at a table, right, and you're having lunch with somebody and you're busy having a conversation and this person is now texting somebody that's not there. Instead of being present with you, they're on their phone texting somebody that's not even present at lunch. That is dismissiveness. And you need to call it out because, number one, particularly as it relates to the phone, that's an addiction. People don't even realize that they're doing it. And it's become so ubiquitous in life that we literally don't even think about the impact that it's having on other people. And so if this is somebody, a friend, if this is a colleague, if this is somebody in your family, it's a partner, and somebody is being dismissive. They're looking at their phone, or you're pointing something out, oh my God, the full moon. And they don't even acknowledge it, that's showing indifference and disregard. And you need to call it out because that behavior is impacting you. Now, again, I'm starting to feel like the world's worst person because I'm realizing I have been called out on all this shit all the time. My husband has called me out on this, in particular with the phone, that if, Mel, I'm talking to you, I want to have the experience of you paying attention. And he said to me, there's a very big difference between you hearing me and me experiencing that you're actually listening. How many times have you had that experience where you're talking to somebody and they're like on their phone, like, and they're like, are you even listening to me? And they're like, yeah, you said that you wanted to get pizza tonight instead of getting sushi. Now they heard what you said, but the way they were behaving was dismissive because they made you feel as though they were indifferent or were disregarding what you were saying. And so one of the things that happened for me, because I, of course, did not realize that that behavior made Chris feel like I was indifferent or that I could care less about what he was talking about, is I actually have a basket in my kitchen where we put the phone. It's there except for when the kids take it, which they did a couple days ago. So I'm realizing I need to actually replace the basket that's in the kitchen. And that's where the phone goes when I'm not working. And when I am with my husband, my phone is typically in my purse or on a counter. It's not on my person because if it's on my person, I tend to pick it up. And it's only in the calling it out that I have become way more conscious about this behavior. Now, what's going to happen for you when you call out somebody that's being dismissive is you are going to feel more confident. You're going to feel more respect because you are asking for what you need in order to be respected. And that's why it's so important to call this stuff out. Again, rule number one, most people that are engaging in these common forms of disrespect don't mean to be disrespecting you. So calling it out helps them and it helps you. So let's move on to number 4. Number 4 is when people are condescending. This one sucks. And again, this whole list is making me feel kind of bad about myself because I'm realizing that I engage in being condescending. And so I'm going to give you an example of how subtle this can be. So my husband has this style of communicating where he kind of asks a question out loud. So he might turn to me and say, so are we getting snow this weekend in Vermont? And in the past, without even thinking, I will turn and go, do I look like a weatherman? I have no idea if we're getting snow in Vermont. Why don't you just Google it? I have no idea. So Chris is just casually asking about the weather, and I am being a condescending jerk. And so if somebody responds to a question or somebody responds to something that you're saying in a condescending way, call it out. Chris is really good at this. I feel like I'm bringing you into a marriage therapy counseling session right now. But Chris is really good at this. So he'll literally go, dude, you don't have to use that tone of voice. I was just asking if you knew what the weather was. I thought maybe since you're online all day, you would have seen the weather report. And it's easier to ask you, Mel, than it is to Google. When somebody points out that you're being condescending, honestly, I personally feel like a jerk. So I appreciate it when somebody calls me on my tone of voice, which my kids also do, or they point out when I'm being a little bit rude and I didn't mean to. And it makes me a kinder and a nicer person. Now, what is it going to do for you? It's going to make you feel better about yourself because every time you call out somebody's tone of voice or you call out a demeaning way that they're talking to you, you feel a little bit better about yourself because you're not putting up with that crap because you don't have to. Number 5 common way that people are showing disrespect is when they're pressuring you. I'm sure you've had this happen. You don't feel like going out. You don't want to get out of your sweats and get off your couch and turn off the television and go meet your friends out, even though you said that you would. This is the kind of pressure that you get when you're like, guys, it's been a long day at work and I just don't want to go out. I've changed my mind. You send the text, and then what are you getting back? Oh, come on. You're such a party pooper. You never go out anymore. That kind of pressure blows. And it's disrespectful. Like, what you want to hear from your friends, what you want to hear from your family is, totally get it. We're going to miss you. Is there anything that you need from us? And so you need to call it out, because you're not supposed to be a battering ram for that kind of pressure just because people are annoyed that you don't want to do something that they want to do. Stand your ground, do what works for you, and do not put up with it. Because some nights you just need to be in your sweats, and you need to watch TV, and you need to do what works for you. Forget the pressure and focus on yourself. All right, let's go to number 6. And number 6, ooh, this one stings. This is one of those forms of disrespect that when it happens to you, you're like, did you really just say that to me? Really? And that is a backhanded compliment. Oof. Those backhanded compliments. What is a backhanded compliment? It's like when somebody says something that in their stupidity, they think is going to make you feel good, but underneath it, there's this underlying assumption about you that actually hits you because it is the opposite of making you feel good. And here are some common examples of backhanded compliments. Oh, you're going back to work? That's so great. I could never let my kids be with a stranger all day, or I'd feel so bad if I put my kids in daycare. Wait, did you compliment me about going back to work, or did you slam me for putting my kids into daycare? Which one is it? Because it's not this, it can't be both, right? Or how about this one? Oh my gosh, you're so articulate for somebody who just graduated from college. Or your hair looks so professional when it's straight. You should really straighten it more often. Or, God, you look so much better without makeup. Now, the context is really key, because there are some friends or family members that when they say something to you about the fact that you just look so good without makeup, they actually mean it. They're not saying, boy, you do a terrible job at makeup. They actually mean it. But there's times when you get these kinds of backhanded compliments where you know that it's really not a compliment at all. We were also laughing about the fact, as we were talking about this video, my team and I, that I could come up with this example. I have not actually said this to my husband yet, but I realized that if I'm not careful, it would come out as a backhanded compliment. So my husband has recently discovered this amazing type of pants that Lululemon makes that sort of look like khakis, but they're not really khakis. They're really like performance fabric joggers. And I don't really love them on my husband. I prefer when my husband wears a particular style of jeans. I just think he looks so great and so pulled together, and they're really flattering. And the problem is that these Lululemon pants that he has found are really soft. They're really comfortable. And he now wears them all the time. He wears them with clogs. Not the greatest look. He wears them when we're going out to dinner. Not exactly my favorite look. Are they fine around the house? Of course. Are they fine when you're doing chores? Of course. Are they fine when you're exercising? Absolutely. But this little backhanded compliment thing is making me realize that when I make the request or I compliment the fact that he's wearing jeans, I need to do it in a way that's really respectful and really empowering, instead of sliding into the area of a backhanded compliment. So I'm going to work on that. All right. And the final one is lack of consideration. This one is kind of sneaky. And it's happens a lot because people get so wrapped up and focused in what they're doing that they don't realize that what they're doing is having an impact on you that feels like disrespect. So here's a scenario. You're sitting, at the kitchen table, and you're working on something. You're typing, or you're writing, or you're reading, and somebody in your family or your partner comes in, turns on the television, and starts watching television or watching a game, and it's really loud, and now you're distracted. I can give you another one because my kids do this all the time, or at least they used to until I started calling it out. I would be cooking dinner, and all 3 of the kids would be on their phones, and they would be watching TikTok videos with their volume on. So all three of them are watching different videos with different sounds, all going at the same time. And none of them seem to be bothered by it. But it has a lack of consideration that feels really disrespectful. Well, it certainly feels disrespectful to me because I find it really distracting when I'm listening to three different videos playing at the same time. And so calling it out not only will point out behavior that somebody may not even realize is distracting. I mean, if you have the ability to watch a video and just pay attention to your sound and tune out all the other sounds around you, that's a superpower. And so you don't realize that the fact that you're listening to something out loud is really kind of disrespectful to everyone around you. I'm sure you've been like on a plane, or you've been on a subway, or you've been just standing in line at a coffee shop and somebody's watching their phone and they got the volume up and you're like, are you serious here? Or they're on FaceTime with their grandma. Hey grandma, how you doing? And you're standing in line at a coffee shop. Super disrespectful. You might not call out a stranger, but you certainly want to point out to somebody, hey, could you lower that down? Or, hey, would you mind putting some headphones on, trying to concentrate over here on something, or it's kind of loud. Calling that kind of stuff, it is so important because what happens is people, again, don't realize that what they're doing is a form of common disrespect. And when you call it out, you are showing yourself some respect. And every time you do, I promise you, it's gonna boost your confidence. So this is very important because I made a major mistake with Chris. And that is, I did not understand what it does to a man's psyche when he is not successful, and more dangerous when something he's doing is failing and failing publicly. And I had a lot of anger out of financial fear, and I'm talking very generally about standard gender norms.
Right.
So for a guy, the pressure to be a man is about providing, it's about money in the bank, it's about all of the stuff wrapped around success. We feel the same pressure from society around how we look, about our age, about how thin we are, and the pressure is the exact same. Because what happens is when you're not successful as a guy, you not only feel the fear that you're feeling, you feel shame, you feel embarrassment, you feel like a loser, you feel like the world's worst husband. So you gotta understand that because he's already trashing himself more than you ever will. And then what happens though is when you add on to that any kind of criticism, any kind of opinion, any kind of anything but encouragement, it craters them even more. And so Chris and I got into this mode where he was shutting down, he was snapping, he was angry, we were both drinking way too much. And luckily, a bunch of stuff started to happen, and just like you, as I was changing, it was not on the same timeline that he was changing. And so any of my optimism, any of my enthusiasm, any of my success that was starting to happen only shined a light on everything that was lacking. And so what your husband needs, I don't know if he deserves it or not, but I'm gonna tell you what he needs. I'm gonna assume he deserves it because he's probably working really hard and he's probably beating himself up, is he needs encouragement. He doesn't need coaching from you, that'll destroy your marriage. He needs encouragement and validation. And the other thing that I noticed, and this is what's gonna come next, because if your career starts to take off because you're doing all this personal development and your mindset's on fire and you're super expansive, which is super annoying, by the way, to somebody who's down low, you're gonna get what's called breadwinner resentment rage, which as the roles flip in your marriage, you're gonna start to get pissed off that you're the one doing everything and that you're bringing money in and you're also doing most of the chores at home. And why aren't you stepping up when I'm going over here? Which, by the way, makes him feel like this too. So what do you do about it? I think the most important thing is you guys gotta have a conversation, like one for real, about where he's at and what he's feeling. And ask him, what does he need for support? Because we only guess. And, I can tell you one other story. When we got the news about the talk show, not going to season 2, I, of course, was in like an emotional roller coaster for a good week or so. And every day I would come home because my way of dealing with stuff is to try to fix it. And so every day I would come home and I'd be like, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go raise money and I'm gonna buy the show back myself. And then I'm gonna call the syndicator and I'm gonna do it myself. And then Chris, being analytical, would go, so who exactly are you gonna call? And he's not questioning, he's just curious. And then the second day I would come home and I'd be like, I have an idea. I'm going to go straight to all the advertisers that integrated with the show and I'm going to pitch them on the digital. And he'd be like, oh, so who's on the top of the list? He's just having a conversation. And then the third day I come home and I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start doing online courses again. Oh, so you're going to use Kajabi as a back? And I'm like, will you stop asking me questions? And he looked at me. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to help. And I said, let me tell you what I need. Until I'm sane, whenever I come home with an idea, just say these words. That's a great idea. Because I just need validation right now. That's all that I need. And so I think you should ask him, what can you do to support him? If you see him doing things to try to change what's going on, validate that and understand he's already beating himself up. And your job, if you want to help him resurrect the business, if you want this to bring you together, you gotta be the one that's lifting him up through this because he can't do that for himself. If you do want to improve your relationship, there's a simple thing about relationships. The one thing that will change any relationship dynamic, whether it's family or friends or romantic, committed partnership, the one thing that changes any relationship is you going out of your way to make sure somebody else's fundamental needs are met. Are you showing up in a way that your family feels seen and heard and appreciated? Are you reaching out? Are you acknowledging what they're doing? Are you complimenting them on the things that they're doing? For many, many years, my mom and I were at a complete deadlock. We loved each other to death, but we didn't understand each other. And because we didn't understand each other, because in many ways we're super similar and in other ways we're very different, because we didn't understand each other, there was a lot of pent-up hurt because we wanted to feel connected. We wanted to feel supported by one another. But because we live our lives so differently, she's in the Midwest, in the house that I grew up in a really small town. I went east for college. I never came home. We both hate the fact that we don't live near each other. And instead of somehow coming together and figuring out new ways to be more deeply connected rather than living next door to each other, we stopped understanding each other, and that led to a lot of this. And when you stop understanding each other, then you cross your arms and go, oh, well, I'm over here, and why are you over there? And, if come on over the line, and then I'll feel safe with you again. And so we were in a standoff for a long time. A lot of misunderstanding, kind of hurt feelings, bristly phone calls. When I'd get together, either going to see my folks or then coming here, it'd be tense because there was so much unresolved stuff because we didn't understand each other. I wanted her to be loving. She wanted me to be loving. I wanted her to make more of an effort. She wanted me to make more of an effort. Does this sound familiar, everybody? Well, if you want to stop the tug of war that comes from misunderstanding, drop the rope and understand that everybody on the planet just wants to be seen, to be heard, and to be celebrated. And one of the things that has profoundly changed my relationship with my mom, it's started to heal it, is first of all, I've done a tremendous amount of work on myself for my own childhood trauma, my own nervous system. Healing yourself is the greatest way to heal any other relationship, because every relationship starts with you. But the second thing that I did is 3 days a week, I have an alarm that goes off in my phone at the same time that says, call mom. And I pick up the phone and I call my mom. And the only intention behind that call is to just check in and ask her a bunch of questions about what's going on, and to show up in a way, no strings attached, that makes my mom know that I see her, I hear her, and I appreciate and celebrate her. And I notice that the more frequently we talk and check in, the way more connected we are, the way more we understand one another. And it's been and was one way for a long time, because I did it with no strings attached. I did it not to fix my mom. I did it to empower a dynamic where I was showing up differently. And by me showing up differently, it has created a way for her to show up differently, because she now feels emotionally safe with me. She now feels like I understand her again. She now, and says this, I feel like you're back. I feel like the daughter that left for college and never came home has actually come home. And that has happened because I've worked on myself, because I have stopped doing what you're doing, which is crossing your arms and going, nobody understands me, and why don't they support me, and why don't they show up differently? And I've instead said, this matters to me. So I'm going to give my folks what I have been wishing I'd get from them. And that shifts everything, because behind any person that doesn't understand you, or any person that you have some kind of toxic dynamic, I promise you, there is either their own childhood trauma and untreated stuff that they don't have any idea that is impacting their current relationships, or more likely, or on top of, there's hurt feelings. Somebody feels disrespected, somebody feels invisible, somebody feels disconnected. And human beings, instead of leaning toward each other, tend to cross their arms and lean back. It's a protection mechanism. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about the issue that you're dealing with?
So my girlfriend and I have been dating for like a little over 2 years. I have the biggest communication problem in our relationship. She's very expressive, and she wants to know how I feel about things and what I'm thinking, and I internalize a lot of things. I don't want to communicate. Growing up, that really wasn't something that was taught. Like everyone that I have seen growing up, my family, everyone just shuts down. Then a few days or weeks or even months go by, and then it's like, okay, just move on and act like nothing ever happened. So.
And what is her reaction when you withdraw? When you withdraw, do you just get silent, or do you leave the room? What's your mode of withdrawing?
I just want to go out for a walk or something, or lay in bed, and I don't even want to talk. And she wants to try and work things out and like, let's talk about this. What's bothering you? I internalize a lot of things. And so she'll say something and I immediately jump to the conclusion that she doesn't love me anymore, or this isn't going to work.
This question is so relevant for so many couples, and I'm so proud of you for sharing it. The first thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge you, because you zeroed in on the reason why you do this. Every single one of us learned how to communicate positively or negatively based on what we saw growing up. And it takes hold in us before you even realize. Most of this patterning is what I'm going to call it, that you have absorbed. You absorbed by the age of 5. So if what you saw in your household is that the moment there was conflict, people shut down, this is a pattern. It's neither good nor bad. It's just a pattern. This is just how your parents and your caregivers dealt with the stress and conflict in their life. They avoided it. And so it's no surprise that you now are an adult feeling stuck. And the reason why you feel stuck is because you are stuck in a pattern. The great thing about patterns is once you recognize that you have one and you can identify it and you can identify the situations where this pattern takes over like that, and suddenly next thing you know, you're sleeping in your bed instead of talking to your girlfriend. Given that you saw this growing up, what happens now that you're an adult, now that you've seen this, and this is what was modeled for you, is that whenever you're in a situation where you start to feel, uh-oh, my girlfriend's getting upset with me, uh-oh, she wants to talk, uh-oh, we just bickered about something. Before you even think, I gotta talk, your nervous system remembers what it was like to be a kid in a household when your parents were about to argue with each other or when your parents got upset with each other. And what you witnessed was separation. So before you even think, what happens is your nervous system goes, oh, wait a minute, I recognize this. This is a moment of conflict. I know what to do. I leave when this happens because that's what I saw. It happens before you even think about it. So let me give you some advice for a couple things that you can do. I think the two of you should work together to come up with a sentence that you say when you are arguing. And maybe it is something like, I am not going to leave you. I am standing right here. I am not going anywhere. And we need to talk about this. And you need to stand here with me. What you need is just that reassurance up front. I love you. This is why I'm telling you why I'm upset. Let's work through it. Maybe you need that as a safe word, so to speak, to cue you that this is a moment to stay. The second thing that I want you to do is I want you to always use the I statements. So when we get into arguments with the people that we love, or with anybody for that matter, and we start going, well, you do this, and then you raise your voice, and then you do this thing, and da-da-da-da-da-da, you always, always, always want to use I feel. And so when you're arguing, I know it's uncomfortable for you to talk about your feelings. You can say, I am scared to say this because I'm scared you're going to leave. I'm scared to say this because my mom and stepdad never talked about anything, so this is new for me. You can always talk about what's going on for you. And so for you to always anchor in choosing what you're feeling and choosing to say it out loud, it's a way for you to live even more openly and more fully and be more connected to her. The final thing I want to give you is that if this is a really intense argument about something, and you really do need a second to cool down, the only way that it is, I think, respectful to yourself and to your partner, if you need to go do something and remove yourself, is to say, I need 30 minutes. You put a timeline on it. And then you say, and then I promise I will come back and I will resolve this with you.
I think those are very useful. I think I can definitely implement those in my life and see how that's going to change things, my relationship with her,
The one thing I know in talking to you, you're going to be okay. And you are going to have a life full of love because you're doing the really hard work right now of learning how to love yourself. Every time you choose to stand in that moment that's terrifying, and you choose yourself and you choose to express what you're feeling and you choose to stand there and love yourself enough, you get stronger and stronger and stronger. So when I was a young lawyer, I worked the night shift as a public defender in Manhattan. So I would literally go to work at 11 o'clock at night and I wouldn't get home until 8 o'clock in the morning and I was exhausted. And so, I think that what I would do is a lot of times what ends up happening in a relationship is, do you ever notice that change creeps into it? And all of a sudden change is upon you and you find that things aren't working. And then you're inside the change and you don't know how to evolve it so that it works for you. And so what I would do is I would find a weekend and I would carve out an hour or two and I would have an Uber meeting with your spouse. And I would have a very open dialogue that, given where you are now in your life, your age, if you have children, how old are your children? If you have pets, how many pets do you have? And whatever the shift is now in your life, what support systems do you need from one another that make you feel connected? It might be that when your husband's coming home from the night shift, if you have breakfast out and a cup of coffee waiting, it feels like the most tremendous act of love. If he then wakes up for his shift and he has dinner with you, but he's preparing it, it feels like an act of love. Like, there are ways to have these meaningful connections, but you have to be intentional about it. One of the things that I realized is that I think a book that would probably help, because you're focused on time, is if you haven't read the 5 Love Languages, I would read that. Or I would take one of the free quizzes online about it, because Chris and I had a lot of misunderstanding because I communicate through gifts of affection. And that's how I communicate love. I also do, what's it called?
Acts of service.
What's the one where you compliment somebody?
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. I am a words of affirmation person. Holy smokes. I should literally walk around life wearing a cheerleader outfit. I really should. Chris is all acts of service. And so Chris does acts of service in silence, and it never translated for me because I'm looking for the kind of love language that I speak, which is I want gifts. And I want, not like material stuff, but just like, give me some flowers or, like do something. And it sounds so rude, but, and I also want you to tell me I look nice. Tell me I did a good job. Chris is acts of service and acts of affection. We have the exact opposite love languages. And so even getting on the same page about what you need from each other in terms of how you speak it and how you receive it, it will disappear the issue of having opposite work schedules, because maybe what you need while your husband's working night shift is for him to send you 2 or 3 texts in the middle of the night so that you wake up and you immediately see that he was thinking about you. Maybe that's what you need. Maybe he needs acts of service, meaning the coffee is ready so that he knows that he's not forgotten. And so I would have an Uber alignment meeting based on not where you've been, but where you are and where you want to go. And I would use the 5 love languages as a way to give that conversation structure about what you need. What's the key to staying connected when you're in a long distance relationship and you don't get to see your partner? Well, first of all, I think John O'Leary and Mel Robbins, we are the 2 best equipped people to answer this question.
Anybody can.
How long have you been married?
We've been married 15 years.
We've been married 22 years, and John has how many kids?
We have 4 children.
I have 3 children, and we are also on the road at least half the year.
That's about that.
Yeah, so I guess my secret is I text my husband all day long. I send him photos from the road. I feel more connected to my kids sometimes when I'm traveling because they miss me and they accept my FaceTime calls. And when I'm home, I notice that they're like, can I have some money in the car keys? I gotta go. And then when I try to FaceTime them or something, they're not. So I have longer conversations with them over FaceTime. But all kidding aside, I visually take them along with me by taking photos and texting it. We have a family group chat that I'm constantly texting in with them. We Snapchat a lot with the kids.
Awesome.
I don't know. I know. I spend a lot of time acknowledging what Chris is doing because it blows to be the partner at home.
Much harder job.
Much harder job. And when you're traveling, you're distracted and going out to eat and bumping into fun people. When you're home, you're still doing the laundry
know.
and the kid shuffle and walking the dog, and so you can feel unappreciated.
Mel got a standing ovation today.
So
and
did you.
Chris is at home cleaning up vomit right now.
Yeah.
The dog poop from the living room. It's a
Probably.
hard job.
Yeah. So what do you do? What are your tricks to stay connected?
Technology, of course. So that's a wonderful way to do it. The best way I would suggest is when I'm home, like you can't call me. Work can't get me. I'm with her only. So for me, it's not about balance. It's about flow. But when I'm home, I am completely engaged as a husband and as a dad and as a leader in life, I hope. And that's one piece. The second is this. A couple years ago, we were struggling a little bit in our marriage. Not bad, but enough. And so I committed on January 1 to make a list of everything that Beth was doing right. Because I was finding myself making a list of things she was doing wrong. And this was a secret. So this is she just received this. But on January 1, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, for 360 days without her knowing it. And then on Christmas morning, she's opening up all the gifts, and I never give her good gifts. I give her like hot red dresses that she can wear on Valentine's Day. It's brutal. I never give her a good gift, but I gave her this old rusted out leather journal. And she opens it up January 1, January 2, there's a receipt from our dinner together, a couple trips that we took together.
I am stealing this idea.
It was awesome, not only for her to receive it, but all year long, I was falling in love with what she was doing right rather than what she was doing wrong. And so I still do this now, 3 years in. It's just an awesome thing that helps me remind myself how awesome my wife is.
That is incredible. Your answer is way better than mine, and I'm stealing this idea.
Go for it, you'll love it.
I love it.
Awesome.
Love it. Every single woman that's watching this just collectively went, my husband is a jerk.
He is a jerk. Make him do better.
John is the winner.
But, so for the ladies, we might be jerks too, because maybe we can also acknowledge how great the Chris's and the Steves, the Roys are in the marketplace. What you focus on grows. So focus on the good, and it's going to start magnifying.
Awesome. Awesome. Wow. Oh, I love that. Yes. That's just not for heterosexual couples, too, by the way. That works for any couple of any shape, size, kind, whatever. Yes, because we all want the same thing. We just want to feel like we matter and somebody notices.
That's a fact.
Oh, my God, I'm stealing it. We've got a great question about dealing with relationships, friendships, where you have a close friend who's a real downer, and they've got all kinds of issues, and they are draining the you-know-what out of your energy. It happens all the time. I'm going to say a couple things about this. I have something that I call the 6-month rule. For the people in your life, your friends, your family, people are going to go through ups and downs, and I think it's super, super, super important that you be there for people, that you listen to the things that they're struggling with, that you give advice, that you help them find resources. You must do that. That's just part of being an incredible friend. However, when the issue sticks around so long that your friendship spirals into a situation where that friendship is nothing more than you listening to somebody complain, and now it's zapping your energy, now it's time for you to change how you're behaving in the friendship. So this is why I call it the 6-month rule. For 6 months, absolutely listen to somebody. Give them all the advice, be the shoulder they cry on, let them bitch and kvetch and all that stuff to you all day long. But if after 6 months your friend is still complaining and doing nothing, and is still complaining and acting helpless, is still stuck in that rut and refusing to take your advice, it's really important that you draw some boundaries. And it's important for you, it's also important for your friend. So here's what you're gonna do. You're basically just gonna say, look, I love you. I know you're going through a hard time, but I will no longer listen to you complain about it. And the reason why is because it's not helping you, and it's really starting to make me sad that you're still this stuck and you're not taking action. Let's definitely hang out. Let's spend a lot of time together, but we're not allowed to talk about this anymore. The second you start taking action to fix the situation, we can talk about it again. And you know that I'm here for you, but I'm not here for you so that you can stay stuck. I'm here for you so that you can get better, so that you can grow. Now, I had a friend about a decade ago who was in a situation where she had just been broken up with. I think she was struggling with an eating disorder because she was getting scary thin. And for 6 months straight, she would complain about her body, complain about how depressed she was, but she refused to see a therapist. She refused to seek counseling. She refused to read the books that I gave her. And I finally said to her, I'm really, really worried about you because this situation is scaring me and you're not doing anything. And so we're no longer allowed to talk about this unless you're going to go get some professional help or you're going to start taking some small steps to get healthy again. She stopped talking to me, completely stopped talking to me. Do you know she reached out to me in Facebook, gosh, like 2 years ago? and told me that that was one of the most confronting conversations, and it actually was the wake-up call that she needed. And right after the conversation where I said, "You're scaring me, and we're not going to talk about this anymore unless you start to take steps," her mother had a very similar conversation, and she started to get the help that she needed. So you never know what a difference it's going to make in the person's life when you're willing to be that honest. You also need to be doing that for your own sanity and your own well-being. So 6-month rule: when friends are depressed, when friends are stuck, when friends are going through a really tough time, absolutely positively be there. Let them cry, let them complain, let them suck the energy out of everything because they need you. Provide all the help and resources you can, and then after 6 months, if this is starting to drain you and if they're doing absolutely nothing to get better, that's when you draw the line.
How do I rebuild my relationship with myself when starting from ground zero?
So, Mel, this is a pretty broad, expansive question, and so I thought maybe we would talk about this and then we would narrow down into specifically what we're talking about. So starting from ground zero might mean, hey, I had a traumatic event happen to me, or maybe my life is changing. Maybe I'm reaching a point in my life where I need to do something different. I'm learning that everything I've done to make me happy or fulfilled or satisfied isn't working. So for Federico, where do we even start? What do we talk about?
You actually start the exact same place we all have to start. Every morning in the mirror. Every single morning in the mirror. You see, the most important relationship that you have in life is the one you have with yourself. It is the foundation of every relationship that you have. It's the foundation of how you experience life. And what we're going to punch a hole through today is the fact that every single human being has a disgusting, ugly, self-destructive habit that nobody is talking about that is part of your morning routine.
Yeah.
And here's the habit. Frederico and everybody on the planet currently stands in front of the mirror as they brush their teeth. Hopefully you're brushing your teeth and wiping that gunk out of your mouth, right? So we get rid of the dragon breath. But as you're doing that, you're doing one of two things. Every human being does this. You either beat the daylights out of yourself and you focus on all the stuff you need to fix, the things you hate, the parts of yourself you can't stand. And that's the good news, because the majority of people are doing the other thing. This is sad. The majority of people cannot even look at themselves in the mirror because they are disgusted or they are disappointed or they don't like how long they've let themselves go. And so every morning, part of your morning routine right now, and this goes so down to the core of what's not working and what you can easily flip and change. Because if you stand in front of the mirror and you can't even look at yourself, that is a habit of self-rejection that gets repeated every single day. You are not even secure enough with yourself and accepting enough of yourself to look at the mirror and see, holy cow, because here's the other thing I want everyone to understand right now. We're going to explain the high five habit, but here's the first breakthrough. You're either, be honest with yourself, which do you do? Do you not look in the mirror, or do you focus on the things that you need to fix?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do look in the mirror, and yeah, there's certain, I'm going through the day, I'm like thinking how I could have done things differently, what I need to do the next day. Yeah. So I do look in the mirror.
Okay.
Yeah. I tend to avoid looking in the mirror. Yeah. Why is that?
You tell me.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, think about it. Why do you think you don't look in the mirror?
I've never thought that it was a necessity to gaze upon myself. I'm sure I glance. There's a picture of me in the mirror, but it becomes second nature in a way.
Yes.
And so I don't beat myself up so much. I mean, that's a different sort of story that we tell ourselves. But I've never thought about the power of looking in the mirror and how that might actually benefit me.
Well, I want you to consider it's not a reflection. There are two human beings in the bathroom with you every morning. There's you.
And my daughter, she's always
so now there's 4.
bothering me in the bathroom.
Or the dog or whatever, or there's 2 human beings.
Right.
There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror. And the human being in the mirror is really trying. And they are in need of your support. And they are in need of your encouragement. And they need you to wake up and to see them, and they need you to stop beating them up, and they need some encouragement. And this is a really deep thing. And it begins every morning by simply taking a moment and being with the human being in the mirror, which I think represents your soul, your spirit, your potential. For people that, kind of like the inner child work and that stuff, it represents the person inside you that's still trying to heal. And if you begin your day every day by not looking in the mirror or by picking apart the things you don't like, 91% of women do not like how they look.
Wow.
50% of people cannot look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And what you just said is exactly right. Most of us, it's so casual, spend that moment drifting into the day where we start to think about all the things we need to do. Or, if you're like a lot of us, you're already pile driving yourself going, I got up too late and I got to answer that email and I didn't get this done and and then you catch yourself in the mirror. And you then start, oh my God, I look like crap and I got to be on a Zoom call in 8 minutes and I haven't walked the dog yet. And the pile driving begins.
Yes.
And you guys know that once your attitude goes negative, it's going to continue to take you down.
Yeah.
And so first things first, we got to break the habit of self-rejection. And we need to create a new habit of partnership, trust, encouragement, compassion, connection to self. Because if we can start to help you every morning to start your day with a little bit of partnership and compassion with yourself, if you can build the ability to like yourself, even if you're not where you want to be in life, it won't matter if other people don't like you because that can't change the fact that you like yourself.
Yeah.
And so this isn't about being a narcissistic asshole. This is not about being a jerk. This is not about being selfish. This is not about being some cocky, overconfident. This is about compassion. This is about support. This is about your most fundamental, profound needs. Love people, use things. That's your book.
Yeah.
None of us know how to love ourselves. And it begins every morning with this new habit I want you to create that I created during a terrible moment in my life called the high five habit. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.